Welcome everyone back to Track A. It is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panelists today. First, Shawn Shan is a fourth-year PhD student at the SAN Lab at the University of Chicago. His groundbreaking research is dedicated to developing technical solutions that empower individuals to combat unethical AI systems. Our panelist is not only a brilliant academic, but also a recognized leader in the field. He has been honored with several prestigious awards, including the Forbes 30 Under 30 Award, the USENIX Internet Defense Prize, and the Chicago Innovation Award. Our second panelist is Dr. Nicolò Brandizzi, completed his PhD in the Sapienza University of Rome in 2024. His thesis focused on the problem of agency and misalignment in modern large language models. He is involved in numerous AI-centered initiatives in Europe, such as CLAIRE and TAILOR, with an interest in mental health and well-being among academic researchers. He is now a postdoc at Fraunhofer Society in the Institute for Intelligent Systems, where he works at the data-related issue in training large language models. Now I leave the stage to Shawn for his presentation.
Hi, hello everyone. Let me share my screen here. There we go. All right. Can folks see this? All right, good. All right,
Yes.
so sounds good. All right, so I'm going to talk a few minutes about some of my research. I'm then happy to take any questions after that. So my research is called CLAIRE. So the idea or the main focus is to protect artists, protect creatives from the misuse of generative AI models. And specifically, we're going to look at text-to-image models, right? These are AIs, I'm sure you have seen some of these, that can output images given a random text prompt, right? You can ask to generate a hedgehog, you'll generate a picture of a hedgehog. And these start popping up in 2022, but ever since the last couple of years, and they really have evolved tremendously. And these are some AI-generated artwork, right? It's very high quality. They can generate arbitrary contents for a diverse set of styles. They're not perfect, but they're able to replace a lot of the jobs, a lot of the positions that traditionally meant for human artists. So now let's talk about some of the problems, right? So the problem of these models is that they're basically trained on images just simply from the internet. And many of these images, they do not ask for the consent of the author, and many of the images are copyrighted, right? And it's safe to say that the only reason that these models are able to generate these images is because they are trained on a massive amount of high quality art from different platforms, different social media, right? And artists, for nearly all the cases, did not give consent to this model training. And let's make it a little bit more concrete and look at how these AI training practice impact human artists. And we're going to follow a story of Kelly McKernan. So Kelly is a very famous artist today, but ever since she was young, she's passionate about your art, right? So going to art schools, finding her art style and perfecting that art style over the years to finally become a professional artist, right? Making most of her income directly or indirectly through some of these artwork. And this process took 20 plus years for Kelly, and it's really not uncommon for for professional artists to spend that long time to develop their style. And what happened next was a couple of years ago, Kelly found that over 50 of her painting was scraped into the Lion 5B dataset, right? So this is a dataset that is used to train most of the text-to-image models that we see before. And as you expect, there's no consent from Kelly, no compensation, no credit given to Kelly whatsoever. Right? And the only form of credit is that her name, right? Kelly's name is associated with some of these artwork. And because of that, you can do this, right? You can go to one of these models today and say, generate me an image in the style of Kelly McKernan. You'll start outputting these very high quality artwork, very much the same style as how Kelly would paint them. So these type of style mimicry has happened, is happening, and it's has a huge impact on many of artists, right, even become its own industry recently, right? So style mimicry today, there are entire online marketplaces, right, just designed for this type of mimicry. And so how this works is that, some people will find professional artists that they're interested in, right? They take images from the artist's website, from their social profile, train an AI model specifically just to generate images in that artist style, right? And these artist names here. And then they put on these marketplaces and ask for, money compensations for some people to use their art, right? Or to use their models. And from a consumer perspective, right, there is really little reason for us to go to the original artist for a piece of art now, because these model can output very much the similar style quality art pieces, but for much cheaper price and much faster to iterate. Right now, what does this do to the artist industry, right? So it is really an understatement to say we see a tremendous disruption to not only their income but also their livelihood. Right? So we talked to over 1,000 professional artists last year. Many face this dilemma of they either post their artwork online but risk getting mimicked, or they can take their entire art portfolio offline, as way to stop AI, but it will significantly reduce or significantly hurt their business. We see models replacing artists, many are quitting art. The future of this industry is getting destroyed as we speak, right? There's really no reason for someone to studying art today, given that AI models are so powerful of taking their style, even they become successful. A lot of depression in the space as well, right? So these are some of the findings in our research, but these are just everywhere, right, on the internet, and it gets really dark. Right? There are cases where our students are so depressed about their future and they're attempted self-harm. All right, now let me talk a little bit about my research. We call this GLAZE. It's about protecting artists specifically against this type of mimicry, this type of attack. Right, so a little quick background story about how this kind of project started. Right, so we're researchers, we're not artists. So the project started with artists reaching out to us asking for help. Right, from there we engage with many artists on online town halls and on Zooms, working very closely with them to build GLAZE and publish research paper on this. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as well as some of the news on this got out. So in March last year, we released the tool, it's GLAZE tool. People can download this for free to use. And to date, we have around 2.6 million downloads, where a lot of artists are very interested in using GLAZE to protect their art. All right, so very quickly about how GLAZE works. Right, so at a very high level, when you do not have protection, right, anybody can go to a website, take some art, build a model, and the model will be able to generate these images in your style. But now with GLAZE, what you do is before artists post an art piece online, they will first run through GLAZE. Right? GLAZE will add some very small changes on these art pieces that are barely visible for human eyes, but they're designed or optimized to confuse these AI model if they were to train or to learn the art style from these GLAZE artwork. Right? And what happens then is if someone were to run the exact same type of mimicry on this GLAZE art, you will fail to generate the correct art style, generating something that's completely different. Right? And so in this way, the original art style is safe and protected. So I'm not going into the details about the exact way we're optimizing this perturbation or this small change, but what I'm going to say is we're relying on this fundamental vulnerability of AI models, right, that has been exists for many years, that AI model have many blind spots, right? We can exploit these blind spots for this type of protection. Let me show you some results, right? So these are original images on the left from 3 different artists. On the right are the glazed versions, right? So very hard to see the changes at this resolution. But what happens when someone were to train on these art, right? So if someone were to train on the original art, again, you can get very high mimicry, high, quality images very much in the same style as the artist. But if they use Glaze to protect their art. These are some of the AI generated images, right? Very much different styles, so that original style is protected. Right, so again, we released the app, right? So people can download the application for Mac and for Windows for free on our website. And we got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of artists are passionate about this, are volunteering their own talent for different pieces of this project. Very quickly, also we're talking to many other creatives, right? Songwriters, voice actors, writers. They're all concerned about AI taking their jobs and taking their style. Also speaking to entertainment companies as well as many legislators, right? So in the US, many legislators are interested and passionate about regulating AI, or at least understand how AI impact people's life. So engaging in a lot of conversation with them. All right, so I'm gonna stop here and have Nicolò go through his talk, and then happy to take any questions about this part. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Shawn. Now, Nicolò, it's time for you to introduce your presentation to us.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So first, I have it's a lot of presentation. I will definitely be one of the guys with questions for you later. Okay, this being said, hello everyone, I'm Nicolò Brandizzi, and today, since the topic of this presentation is challenging the AI paradigm, I want to talk to you about federated learning, and specifically federated approaches to data challenges in ethical AI for transparent and fair AI through privacy and consent. So, but first a bit about me. So, as you know, I'm Nicolò Brandizzi. I did my PhD, as Anka said, at Sapienza, finished it a couple of months ago, actually, with my thesis on conversational agent in human-machine interaction. And in general, I worked close in topics such as mixed human-machine cooperation. Right now, I'm working at Fraunhofer as a postdoc, and I'm working on different projects, but I would say the main one are related to large language modeling. And also, finally, I'm also active in various AI confederations or AI activities around Europe, such as CLAIRE. Okay, let's start with a question. How does modern AI work? And of course, many of you would know that more or less fairly, would know the process. So here I have it in 4 or 5 points. The first thing you do is you take the internet, you extract some relevant data from it, and you do this kind of magic processing, you train the work. So this is fairly easy to understand, and it's of course a high-level view of what's happening under the hood. But let's, for the sake of interest, let's see what happens, what is actually extracted from the internet. You get audio, video, and images, but what are contained in these files? So one of the first things you will notice that it's plenty of personal data. Your pictures, your name, your home address sometimes, your employment history, education level, political and religious views, you can extract that easily from social medias, your interests and hobbies, relationship, and whatsoever. Okay, that, there's already some concern over there. But the most concerning part to me is that all this data is actually gathered without your consent, as also Shawn said before. And this is in violation already of some law, for example, European GDPR, but we also have the CCPA from California and the PIPEA in Canada. And this, of course, given the speed with which AI developed, the regulators are catching up, but they were caught unprepared. And of course, when you're extracting data from the internet, you're subjecting your models and your AIs to plenty of biases. Could be racial, gender, or religious biases. And one, you could actually try to filter it out, and that's actually what happens. How are these issues mitigated? So you basically go in that magic processing part I told you about, and you try to filter it out. You can anonymize personal information, and there's a whole field of AI trying to do that. You also try to filter out low quality data, and we could spend hours talking about what low quality even means. You can check for license compliance, which is something that I'm actually happy to be working and to say that I'm working on right now. We are working with Fraunhofer, and it's a very demanding job. Not all data or images files come with license attached. So sometimes you have to infer it, or sometimes there is no way to know. And of course, you want to detect stuff such as pornography and toxic content, and also filter. And the field is well aware of the biases, everything that not everything should be considered as good training data for language models. And these are the mitigation that we are focusing on. Of course, these are not really perfect. None of these strategies is 100% accurate. And most importantly, they take resources away from training. So companies don't like that. Companies want to train a bigger, faster, more accurate language model as fast as they can. They want to release it now, not tomorrow. And anything that comes in between this objective, it's usually set aside. So can we do better? Can we do better? Of course, we're here to challenge the current AI paradigm, which I hope you now understand a bit better. And the answer is actually yes, with federated learning. And I will now shortly introduce what federated learning even is. And you basically start from the approach, the training approach we are all familiar with, and it's the one that's the most used right now. So all the taking the internet, downloading the internet, processing and training happens in a big, gigantic compute center. And this, of course, can be taught as something like the compute centers in OpenAI, Microsoft, and whatsoever. We also have a few in Europe, which are of competitive. And of course, this is the current challenge. What happens in the federated learning paradigm? It's basically kind of the same. You still need some big compute center, not as big, I would say, but you are also interacting with other devices. And these devices can help in various reasons, various methods, and can give you the data. They can actually help you with training if the device is powerful enough. But the main point here is that you're not relying 100% on one compute center. And more importantly, you're not relying 100% of data downloaded from the internet. And so behind this device, there is a user. And the user is choosing to share their data. And that's the most important part. And then the data is, of course, used to train AI. What I want really to express here is the fact that the data doesn't have to be downloaded without consent. The user can choose to give the images, files, whatever, in order to train. But of course, what's in for the user? Why would you do that? Why would you give your data for free? And in order to really understand this, we actually have to go back to something completely unrelated, community-owned microgrid. So some of you might know this. I didn't know about them. So basically, when we're talking about energy suppliers, you have a grid which is made up of different factors. You have generation, transmission, and distribution. And in the community-owned microgrid business model, or in general model, you basically have a community of houses with solar panels or anything that is generating electricity. And this electricity is fed back into the grid. And of course, what's in for the users, or the houses in this case, is that the energy they're not using for themselves, they're selling it. Or they're getting discount when later on they buy energy when they are not producing enough. And I don't know if you can spot the similarities. So does it look familiar? And basically, yes. So if we replace the solar panels, house with solar panels with users, the energy with data or compute power too, and the grid with the computed center we saw before, we do have a match. So what I'm really trying to say here is that we could use this new approach, federated learning, which is not even that new, but it's gaining popularity. We can use this approach to democratize AI in order to have users really deciding where the data is going and also benefiting from this. So in summary, we have inspected the model data-driven AI model. We have analyzed, of course, the ethical challenges, and we have seen some of the mitigation strategies. So, and of course, notice that how these strategies are not sufficient. They are still severely flawed, and they're not addressing the lack of consent, the lack of privacy from the user point of view. So we have investigated federated learning as an alternative paradigm and compared it to actually an existent and successful business model. And that's what's more important. It's not something in the cloud, in the air, as you would say, in Italian, but it's actually something that can work, that is working right now for a very similar problem. And we have suggested this extension, of course, to the AI industry. And yeah, actually, I hope that this talk has inspired some of you. And yeah, if you would like to know more, please reach out. This is a QR code to my website and also some handles.
Thank you both of you for the fruitful presentation and to introduce to us your research. I have a couple of questions that I prepared for you today. And also, we will give some space later to some questions from the community. So please write them in the box. So I was wondering, because you were talking about AI democratization, how do we move towards an AI that benefits humanity in our current context?
I can share a little bit. So I think it's very important. I think at least the US, we do live in a capitalist society. So if you leave that to OpenAI or big companies to do it, it's very likely they will not consider the benefit of the society, benefit of artists, creatives that are scraping their data off. So I think we kind of have to rely on regulations, rely on movements like artists getting together, joint lawsuits, litigations to push these AI companies to do certain things. But that said, this is also kind of painful or not perfect in the sense that it's very slow, right? Whether litigation or regulation is very slow, there are a lot of damages have already happened. So I do think it will be a very joint effort from technical side, from researchers plus artists, creatives, and legislators to really push forward to protect AI, to guide it, to force at least these AI company to build AI system that benefit the greater society.
Nicolò, we cannot hear you properly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now, please.
Should be better. So I was saying that I completely agree. You cannot expect companies to follow the direction of greater societal and humanitarian good. They will follow money, and that's how they live. That's their blood, actually. So I do agree that it has to start from legislation. And actually, I've been reading a few papers now from economists that are showing how having AI in the hands of just a few companies, it will definitely increase the inequalities that society already is struggling with, So legislations and also speaking out, as researchers, we do have, we are on the front end of these issues, and we should, first of all, be all aware that this is an issue, and talk about it, like we are doing right now, and then talk to people that can actually make a change.
So based on that, about talking to people, maybe it can be also be translated in something like actionable that we can do as as community, right? So I'm also wondering what actions can we individually take, like other types of actions we can do to promote the development of this beneficial AI.
I see, from kind of individual user perspective, it is a little bit challenging, right? So there are many actions you can join, right? Things like you can talk to your local, city council, for example, right? Talk about how AI has really impacted your life or potentially your concerns about AI. And some of these city discussion can reflect to the state, and we'll have hearings. And at least in the US, state has a reasonable amount of power to enforce some of these laws against AI company for scraping, right? We see the CCPA at California. So that's kind of one option or one direction, right? There are other things where you can, be educated about AI, what it actually is, and educate your surrounding people about AI, and hopefully, people or the general population has a better understanding of the technology and more equipped for some of these discussion or communication that may happen in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I want to reiterate on the education part. Learn how to use AI. That's the first step. If you want, you can also learn how it works. That would be probably more advanced, but still very useful. But don't build a wall between you and AI tools just because you're afraid, understandably, that will take your job or you just don't like them. Don't like. The worst thing you can see is like you can see them as an enemy. I would see them as a very useful tool that can be used in various ways. But if you want to see them as an enemy, then know your enemy, right? Don't build a wall. Learn how to use it. Learn how to use it in your everyday life, and learn the weaknesses, of course. And then, of course, what we said before, talk to your city councilor, and in general, join some movements that you're agreeing with.
Yeah, I can add on that on the top, like the first step would be awareness and then start making some first steps. But don't be afraid, don't do that, because out there's a lot of, misinformation, disinformation on AI. So you're not alone out there. So don't be afraid to do the first step. So moving next, I have a question that's more related to sustainability. So what are the current AI-related sustainability concerns from what you know and what is your expertise, of course?
Well, if you don't mind, I would start with that. Basically, every time you're training a model, you're emitting a lot of CO2. There was a study from 2021 already correlating that, and it's more like, I think for GPT-3, the CO2 emitted was more than a small city for one model. And there are plenty of models being run today, all in parallel. And also the way we're training them is basically let's have it bigger with more data, which of course is consuming more instead of trying to figure out how, if you really want to do it, how to do it more efficiently. And the good aspect, I would say, that is having a model more efficient, it also means it's also cheaper to train it. And so you're finally, for random chance, you're aligning environmental sustainability with economic incentives. So that's why there's research in that direction, I would say. But in general, also using ChatGPT or whatever model, which is called inference. So you already train it and you're actually using it for asking a question, whatever, that is emitting CO2. And I cannot stay here and tell you not to use it because it makes life easier, but be conscious. Be conscious, try not to use it for every task it's like driving a car. If you can, bike. And if you can't, be conscious about it.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree on that. I guess another kind of follow-up point is really that, today's model already emits tons of, CO2, but I have been seeing more and more recent, discussion where, Meta or OpenAI just bought tremendous amount of more GPUs or computation powers for training next generation models, right? This is we're talking about, 10 times more devices compared to what they had before, and you can presumably assume they probably emit 10 times more of the CO2 gases going forward. And just, as society, as much as we don't like it, as society more and more integrated with using AI, every single software that's on my device try to have a new AI feature integrated, and that all, of course, consume tons of energies around it. So I would say, regulations and discussion around this is very critical moving forward.
Yeah. Also when you're talking about building more GPUs, where are you taking those materials? The materials are being extracted in a very not sustainable way, only for the goal of achieving a larger, more accurate language model.
Yep.
And how can we build in another way that can be more sustainable the current AIs and the future ones? Like, I know, don't hate me for that, these are tough questions, but if you just have, a way to share your opinion on that would be also amazing.
Well, that's a hard question indeed.
Yeah, I think so. I guess like AI, it obviously is very detrimental to environments, but there are some positive ones. So I was listening to a talk where they can use AI to optimize lights opening or elevators, right? They demonstrated they can cut down the global CO2 by 1% if they integrate their system into all elevators in the world. So I think there are some positive, cycles or applications of that models for energy. And if we can, somehow incentivize those development and research, hopefully, we'll have a net gain impact on the overall environment.
Yeah, in general, we're here trashing AI and how it pollutes and everything, but I firmly believe that climate change, if it will be solved, it will be solved with AI. It's a problem that is too big for us alone, and we do need a powerful tool to solve it. So these and many other things can be solved with AI. And so it's both a tool that is now emitting a lot. I would argue actually that it's emitting for the wrong reason. Now you're training language models for customers, for me to write one email, and you could orient that resources in the direction of climate change, solving that, or optimizing cars and building better electric vehicles. But here I am writing emails and emitting,
Yeah, thank you for sharing your ideas on that. I know that we live in a complex world, and there is no such a right or wrong questions. It's just we need to try our best to find a balance, especially when AI comes into play, of course, with their own, let's put it that way, complexity on its own. But it can be a game changer, as Nicolò mentioned, could be not, let's say, a savior, but if you use properly in a way to find a solution or to be part of the solution, yeah, definitely. So how do we use AI to take the unwanted labor?
What?
How do we use AI to take the unwanted labor that we are currently facing, by the way?
Oh, you mean what labor? I didn't hear it clearly.
Oh, how can we use AI to take, the tasks that we don't want to do, the work we don't, in that sense, yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. So, that's kind of, interesting discussion I oftentimes has with artists is, like we all want AI, vacuum cleaner. We all want AI to do our dishes and, cook meal for us. And then, we can save time to do the things that we're actually passionate about, actually interested in, right? But kind of unfortunately, it's kind of doing the opposite, right? AI is replacing their art, their career, and force them to become, Uber drivers, right? It's not even, just for examples, there are concrete cases where very famous artists say, okay, I just let go of my position and there's really nothing I can do to support my family. I'm deciding to go drive Ubers, right? So I think this kind of go in the opposite direction of this, and going back to the capitalist discussion is replacing or building a vacuum cleaner perhaps is not as lucrative as generating art, writing passages and emails. So I think that's kind of why we're seeing this, and hopefully again we can push it towards a more aligned angle aligned, make AI more aligned with what we want.
Yeah, also, you described a meme I saw like a few days ago where there was like I wanted my AI to vacuum and dry me, and now it's doing everything, and I'm forced to wash my dishes. So I think also as a society we kind of lost the value of material things, like not material in the sense, not digital, I would say, you know. So a painting that is actually there. And of course, you can think like in 10 years, AI will generate it and also 3D paint it. So you will not even see the difference. But I don't know, we are undervaluing the work, the work of a human, in my opinion. So a person that spent 6 hours there drawing something for you has, in my opinion, an intrinsic value that is higher than an AI that generated the image on the fly. And of course, I know that this is not a popular opinion. However, I think also by educating the next generation, the current generation, everyone on again, this emission and the fact that in general, there is more value to something that is human created, at least in the artistic and the creativity part of the human skills, then we could mitigate this.
Okay, I see here that there are some questions from our community, so I would like to move on by asking at least, yeah, let's see if we can make it all of them. So a question from Kwamatok. Shawn, is your work applicable to video and audio files? What have your experiences been, and how does one avoid the old writings to be scripted?
Yeah, so we have some follow-up work, kind of extending what we did in Glaze, which is for still images, to videos, right? So that research paper is coming out, I think later this year. So we'll have some exploration in videos and audio space. And in terms of preventing AI to scrape your website or your content, I think generally is very challenging, right? So there are many things you can do. For example, you can put robots.txt to stop these crawlers. You can put your website with those the CAPTCHA verification so that human can click into it. But overall, all of these things can be bypassed, and it is, there's also no legislation or regulations on AI companies that they will have to follow robots.txt. And we know for a fact that many AI company does not, right? So they do not follow robot.txt. So kind of it's very hard to prevent in general whatever you post online from AI models, right? So whatever a human can see, AI model probably can also see, right? So again, I feel going back to the same point of we should push for regulations, right? So enforce companies to respect robots.txt, for example, will be a big step forward towards this. I think in Europe there are some active discussion around this, a little bit less in the US. But if we can enforce certain regulations on big players at least, then we'll be kind of a lot safer for people to put some of these online.
Okay, so we have also another questions from Yarisa Guillen. What is some research that you recommend us to learn more about AI, and how can we use this support Black-brown communities since it tends to be biased toward those communities?
Well, if you want to look for keywords, you can look for fairness and transparency in trustworthy also AI, and this would probably lead you to a bunch of fields, a bunch of paper, or most likely blog posts that are also very digestible. And in general, these biases are hard to mitigate, especially because the internet is full of them, of negative biases. And learning, in my opinion, learning, like again, using these tools and learning how to spot them. After, for example, for me, after a while using ChatGPT, now I can spot emails or text written by it. And that's a great tool to have in your arsenal when you are reading some text. When you read some text, then you would say, okay, this was AI generated, and then you can be aware that there might be some biases or something similar, I would say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I would say that this space moves very fast, right? So, AI is very new. There are tons of researchers and companies and legislators working on this space. So it is hard in general, even for us as researchers, to keep up what is happening in the space. But I feel overall, looking at keywords, looking at recent papers, look at blog posts, listen to, talks. I find some of the hearings at USENIX are very helpful, right? They invite legislators as well as artists and researchers to get questions about fairness, and those are from my experience very helpful.
I also wanted to share a link that I found really useful. It's called Elements of AI, and it's a website that helps you to learn the basics of how AI works. And I also answer. So next questions is from an anonymous person. So are there any newsletter or books you would recommend we follow to learn more about current ethical and sustainable AI activities?
So I think, kind of going back to the point, books is a little bit hard just because, things move so fast. Whatever book you write, by the time you publish, is probably already outdated as of now. I mean, hopefully it slows down going forward. But in terms of newsletter, I really enjoy, there was one called Batch AI, I think. It was from Andrew Ng at Stanford. So they kind of summarize some of the most recent AI developments and send a newsletter every week, I think. Those are pretty helpful. But I think overall, just Googling, or even just looking at, New York Times, they post some of the very recent development on AI quite frequently these days.
Okay, we have some questions from Discord as well on the server. This question is for Shawn and is asking Anna Sun. The Glaze approach feels similar to how we have dealt with email or comment spam in the early days for Web 2.0. So do you anticipate that you would have to continually upgrade the algorithm as Gen AI models evolve?
I was about to ask this question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so ever since even the last year, we update like 3 times, or there are many small updates, but 3 big time just update to patch against the newest AI. So I know, like it's kind of, I guess the parallel is to most of these security problems, right? Whether it's malware, spam, deep fake, all this, you kind of have to upgrade your defense as attackers evolve their techniques. It is unfortunate, especially in this case, because some artists, once their style get leaked, unless they evolve their style over time, is lost, right? So it's very challenging in this case. So that's why we think our technique like Glaze is a temporary solution, right? It is a stopping gap before regulations, before legislators come in to stop these AI companies.
Okay, so I have a next question from Ursa Onlock. Does Glaze work in any meaningful way for normal photography?
Yes. So it's a very interesting question. So photography is a little bit different from art. We did run into some problem at earlier kind of stages when we released it, because human faces is a lot more visible if you have some changes on it. So we had a new update, I think fairly recently, Glaze 2, that make protection on photography is a lot stronger. So yes, we can protect that now.
Okay, we have another question from Rachel. First of all, I just want to thank Shawn for providing that we should and can fight back. Do you suggest that we glaze all images that we share?
Right.
And then, plus, she has something in the breaks, not just art, but photos of ourselves that we might upload to social media. Okay.
Right. So I mean, Glaze, we kind of design for art or for protecting style specifically. So it does not really work on faces. There are some effect compared to, there's no protection at all. But we're also in discussion with some other researchers on building a tool or similar tool that can kind of protect human faces from, deep fake or AI, mimicry type of things. But those are, very much still ongoing. So currently Glaze does not really works on general images for that matter.
We have the next question for Nicolò from Anna Soon. She asked a really interesting proposition for a federated consent model. You describe this as a map to user/devices. Do you see how this might extend to cloud of service level?
Yeah, I think, what you're asking here is if it can be extended on a more like data-centric level or to systems that are bigger in size and computation power. And if that is the question, then yes, I talked here, I focused mostly on device and users because I wanted to push for consent. But of course, on a client side, on an industry side, what you have is usually you have some automobile industry that have plenty of user data and they don't want to share it with you. And of course, you can just send, let's say, your model to their systems to be trained locally. And what happens is that then they they send back an updated version of the model, and you do that with many compute centers, and that's actually how it would be on a business model even more sustainable. If we go instead back to the users, and what you were asking was more like I have my cloud, I have Google, for example, I have my Google Photos. Can I use that? First of all, how using your photos to train? I don't know. I would opt out personally. However, yes, of course, you can do that. And what I'm also hoping for is the amount of data you choose to share, the amount of computer you choose to share directly correlates with the ownership you have on the final model. So, for example, let's say you have to train ChatGPT 6 or whatever, and I write my email, you would get the 1 cent because you helped with all your emails you have in your Gmail, for example. And yeah, I hope I answered the questions.
We have another question for Nicolò. This time is from Water the Light. Do you know of any crowdfunded large language models already? Where do you see promising developments for such a thing?
Yeah, one model that popped into my mind is from Open Assistant, from the team of Yannick Kirchner. He's a famous YouTuber in the field of AI, and he built this, I think, when ChatGPT 3 came out, so quite a long time ago, let's say, in the AI space. And he built it from scratch with his users being the data providers. And that worked. However, it's not the same quality as a GPT, as an OpenAI model, let's say. And what I see here that could work instead of training from scratch like they did is actually fine-tuning. So fine-tuning is the process in which you have a model that more or less speaks a language or understands something, and then you just train it further on your data to really know you or to really be able to reply to automobile questions again. And in that sense, crowdsourcing might work much better because you need less data, you need less compute, and it's something you could do as a crowd.
We have then another question for both of you from Garnet C. The tools/solutions presented today sounds promising. But what could be done to prevent large companies like Disney using future generations of AI models to replace artists, writers, etc., in the production of their media products? Is this just a consequence of technological advancement, like the death of the radio?
So if you follow MatPat and the movie theory, He has this very interesting video on how Disney is mapping AI actors, both on a face level, body level, and on a voice dimension. And it's doing this because for now there are no regulation avoiding that. And this was also before the strike they had with the actors in LA. And they were, and I think now there are still not regulations to strictly forbid that. And what they plan to do is, instead of paying an actor millions for a movie, they just have a replica. And again, I'm not sure how it works copyright-wise, but if you just think about a copyright I think copyright is 70 years, right? I think it lasts around 70 years. If you think the same then for humans, human appearance at least, then in 70 years, you could use all the actors from today for free. And that's, of course, an incentive, an economical incentive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, adding on top of that, yeah, so it's very grim right now, the situation, just given, Disney, for example, and most Hollywood studios these days have been just scanning your faces. Most background actors just, you go in some place, sign a contract that say all your likeness, appearances belong to Disney now. They pay you $500, I think, right now for background actors, and you just go into a studio and scan your face, and that's it, right? So, and now you can imagine, right? Even for famous, actors of the future, right? Today they're probably not that famous, and their faces may get scanned today. So even they get, famous in the future, they don't capitalize really themselves, right? Disney owns their entire appearance, their own likeness.
Yep.
So that's like kind of the key, I guess, discussion was during the strike, as Nicolò mentioned. I think the final resolution was not super satisfying for the actors. I think there are some regulations on it. Well, not regulation, but certain agreement between movie studios and the actor guilds. But it's not as protective as one may expect, right? So we hope there are some regulations and protection against this. But I think right now it's very challenging, is very problematic in both privacy and just ethical points of view. Yeah.
And I find it so unfair that Disney will come to your house and get every penny when you post a picture of Mickey Mouse, but then they will just scan your entire appearance with the aim of using it for free in a couple of decades. It's yeah.
And based also on that discussion, there is a question related on that, to get deep in that more, from Anna Soon. What are your thoughts on regulation? For instance, the EU AI Act that was passed earlier this year, is it likely to be effective?
That's a good question. Okay. Personally, I'm in favor of regulation. I think I always have this very extreme example of the most regulated time in human history with the Catholic Church during the Dark Ages, which Dark Ages for a reason. And we went through, I think, I don't know how many, 500 years, I don't know how much, and we managed to get here. So even if the most over-regulated environment, humanity made some technological advances. And that is my, let's say, my trampoline for being pro-regulation. So if you over-regulate, you're slowing down everyone. And I'm working now on training language models in Europe, and regulation are slowing us down. However, I am still a firm believer that over-regulating is better than under-regulating. And I forgot the second part of the question, actually.
The second part, she asked, it is likely to be effective, like this sort of regulation of AI.
So the AI Act is effective now when it comes to risky AI uses, so social scoring, for example, emotion recognition, or even just monitoring your employers at work. And for this, it's very effective. However, I'm not sure if I could say it's effective on data and at least consent-wise dimension.
Yeah, I think I can echo what Nicolò just said. Yes, I think regulation space is very lacking, and understandably so, because everything's so fast and it takes time for regulation to come up, both Europe and the US as of right now. In terms of AI Act, I think it's definitely a good step forward, right? Is far from perfect. I think there are a lot of, if you search around online discussion why it is not perfect, but I think it's a very important step to, to move forward. But, again, as Nicolò said, the currently is effective in the places where it's easy to enforce, right? Yes, if this company start tracking me, my work performance, that's very easy to enforce. Okay, stop doing that. But things like, whether they take my data from my, profile to train AI model is very vague, very hard to, find, very hard to enforce. I think we see the same problem with GDPR. There are a lot of privacy clauses and there are enforcement, but in general, it has been very challenging from kind of end user perspective. But but overall, again, this is one of the first act is understandably to be not perfect, and hopefully that gave us some place and space to move forward from here.
The problem is that the AI is just going too fast for regular legislators to catch up. It's too fast for us to catch up as researchers. So
I think we have just a bit of time, 5 minutes left for one more question. It will be the last one. So there are new chips for inference being made for mobile devices, suspensions dot. Are these going to help AI to more efficient and sustainable?
I mean, yes, as I said before, efficiency is highly correlated with saving money, which is in the direction of profit. So companies want the chip to be more efficient. Sustainable is just a byproduct of that, I would say.
Yeah, I think, I feel like it may be challenging in general. I feel like if on-device AI chips might get misused in some sense, right? Say if I'm an app developer, rather than using my backend GPU that I pay for, I can just use whatever AI chips on the user's phone. I'll be a lot less careful with energy consumption, right? Okay, it's user phone anyways. I don't have to pay for electricity. So hopefully, some of that doesn't happen, and we can push to a more sustainable kind of computation future, as Nicolò just suggested.
Right. So thank you for joining us today. I would like to thank Shawn Shan and Nicolò Brandizzi for their insightful contribution on AI ethics and sustainability. Their participation made this session enriching and stimulating. See you guys later. And thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.